Welcome to the Tailored Talks with OMJ Clothing. I'm Brad, one of the co-founders here at OMJ, and also am going to be one of the co-hosts for this series. We, for those that don't know, are a clothing and lifestyle brand. We're here in Charlotte. We're in our showroom here in Charlotte. We were founded in 2013. We specialize in custom clothing, ready-wear clothing, custom suiting, custom shirting, custom sport coats, really just about anything. And all in our style, which is a very timeless and classic style, but also whatever the customer may want. And so that could be whatever their personality is. And we often say, we have a saying here, if you can dream it, we can make it, which a lot of places cannot do. So we're very proud of that. We are a small business, but we do have very big dreams. And one of those has always been or at least for a long time, to do something like this, which is a roundtable format. Not that we think there'll be millions of listeners to this, although I know my family will definitely be listening. But to really talk about all things related to fashion, clothing, all things OMJ, and especially in sort of the niche that we've created, what we found is this idea of experiential retail. And so the point of that being is about the experience, but you have to come into the store to have that experience. And so often with especially custom clothing or higher end clothing, there can be this stigma of it being inaccessible. And at the heart of who we are is about community, about accessibility, is about creating a great experience for our customers. So to be able to have a platform to really show and tell others all that we do, and then even demystify clothing in general and how that can help shape and change somebody, whether they be a little bit overweight, maybe very tall, very short, but just really the impact of a well-made garment that is made for that person and how that can inspire them, create confidence, and really change their trajectory in life. And so throughout this series, we are going to be focused on all things retail, fashion, a lot of things diving deep into our process, all things OMJ. And so we're just really excited. Today, I'm happy to have one of our co-hosts, OMJ employee, Miss Kendra Cheeseman. Kendra has over 25 years of experience, more experience in menswear and retail than all of us put together. So, she doesn't know this, but I always listen and take things away from her day to day. So I know that she'll provide an incredible amount of wisdom and just all things related to the topics that we discuss in this series. To left on the end here is Mr. Will Jones. So Will is a dear friend all the way back from childhood. Commercial real estate by day, he moonlights at OMJ for the sheer fact he loves menswear and clothing. And also, I have to say, even in the fourth grade, this guy was like the best dressed guy at Robinson Elementary. So thrilled to have him. And then last but certainly not least, we have a very special guest today here, my best friend, co-founder of OMJ, jet setter, all things just a savant at fashion and design, Felipe Ho.
Hi, everyone. Hey, guys.
So with what today we wanted to focus on being our first was really the founder story, how OMJ got started. It's actually probably going to be pretty interesting for Felipe and I. We have our talking points throughout the years where we've done with media interviews, different little stories and things like that. But I don't think either of us have really hashed out or talked about the full how we got started.
Yeah, I think we highlight some of the key things throughout the years with different media outlets. It usually is a pretty quick, but it's nice to have some dedicated time on our time to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, we always, are in a very short format. So today is going to be all things OMJ, how we got started. For Will, who's been around for a very long time, I know Kendra has followed along. So I look forward to hearing questions from you two, but I'm sure Felipe and I'll even have questions. Maybe it'll be a bit cathartic for me to even go back and relive some of it. Trust me, it's not all been great. There's been lots of up and down struggles. So with that, we're going to get started. I think probably the first place to start would be where it all started. So I know from my standpoint, Felipe and I were college roommates. In fact, Felipe, for many that don't know, in college, he was sort of the guy that we were all in the same fraternity, the guy that all the fraternity brothers would go borrow stuff from his closet. So even I remember from that time, I was not as into fashion as I am now, but even at that time, Felipe was always known as the guy who knew what to wear for what event. So we would go to all these formals and things like that. So there's just setting the stage there. Felipe and I lived together. We just had a good, I guess, separation of he was good at things that I was not good at and vice versa. So I was certainly more the business side. Can you talk a little bit more about those early, like even way back then, if you can remember?
Yeah, traditional college experience, I think, people might dress a little bit more casual, just because, we lived on a type of campus that was like a mall college campus rather than like a city school at Appalachian State University. But being in Greek life and Brad being in the College of Business, I think that there were more occasions where people had to dress up. We interacted with some friends and fraternity brothers that might have not grown up dressing up. And so it was an opportunity for them to kind of dress up, honestly, for the first time in some situations with formals and events. So it was cool to be able to help and lend out certain things. There were some people that didn't even know how to tie a tie or bow tie.
Still don't.
Yeah, so it was a cool opportunity to be able to help other people in that situation.
Did you get all your stuff back?
No, I definitely didn't.
Do you feel like the transition of like going to college for the first time helped, like being the person that people could borrow clothes from? Because like college when you're a freshman is kind of new.
Yeah, I think I had probably an abnormal amount of clothes compared to other college students, so it was never a problem
How much
for me to
clothes
lend.
did you bring, Felipe? I love that.
You've ever helped Felipe move. And what's the over-under on how many closets have collapsed?
Oh yeah, that happened a lot too. I would move into apartments even out after college, and for example, if you move into like a generic apartment, there will be like one metal rack, right? So I always had to add a second layer on the bottom and go to Lowe's and kind of do that. I'm not the most handy person, so the drywall screws would never be able to hold up to all the weight, and I would always have collapse situations inside closet configurations.
In traditional Felipe fashion, he also had a guy that could come fix it as well.
Well, I can definitely commiserate with you there as well. Drywall was never a fan of me in any of the apartments I leased during college as well. Better to be prepared than not, I suppose.
Yes. So I know we talked about it in college. Also we got to set the timetable here. This is 2007. The Vineyard Vines was a very big thing. Southern Tide. There were a lot of, I call them Southern something or another's, where, they're Southern this, Southern that. And so none of them really fit great. I remember thinking they were all, very, very pastel, which was fine, but I even remember Felipe's like, well, it's fine, but like there just needs to be something a little not mass produced. And so I think that's really where the initial vision came, was we were looking at how do we make something more for like young professionals. They could wear this to work and they can not look like an Easter egg. And then something also that fits a little bit better. I mean, these, a medium was like, I think this problem has been, I think, pretty well solved across the industry now, 17 years later, but things were not a great fit. And so, I think that was sort of the original spark of, hey, like we should be able to create something like, yes, we don't want this maybe American Eagle with logos and, but it is cool to have this brand you can connect with that has a story to tell.
Yeah, and I think there's, from our perspective, there's nothing wrong with the brands that he listed. I think, there's different people with different budgets, right, and resources, and so I think I wouldn't. I don't know. I think styles change. I think at the time, some of those things were really popular. And I've even seen the evolution of some of these brands kind of reinventing themselves, right? And kind of being a little bit more current. I think a really good example in the industry of a brand I think has done a really good job like the past few years is Abercrombie and Fitch.
Yeah, Abercrombie.
For a big box, kind of mass international retailer, I've seen like really good stuff coming out of them now compared to there was just a time frame that I think that the logos were just really popular with young people, and I think that has changed drastically. I also think that there is still a certain lifestyle, coastal areas and like Martha's Vineyard, like up north, where that collegiate prep, there's a variation of it that's still around, and I think that there's a place that is appropriate for that, like that resort style and look. But I think that what we're trying to achieve is something a little bit more polished, that's timeless, that you can wear for all different occasions. And I think that there's stuff, if you look around our store, there's something that you could wear to like a coastal vacation, but that we also have things that you can wear day to day and it wouldn't get old or dated.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You're right with that. And I know. I think thankfully we realized when we graduated that we were just dumb college kids and we didn't know anything. And so,
and honestly, like it probably was a good thing, right? That we, number one, didn't really have it all fleshed out. And then number two, it was probably a blessing that it took a little longer for us to get ramped up. I think some of those smaller brands that were targeting that collegiate, demographic, a lot of them were students that might come from really wealthy families. And so there was a lot of capital pumped into it, and they were ramping up really fast. And I think the thought was just, this is what's popular. Let's have a whole entire story and brand around that. But we actually got a chance to think about it a little bit and kind of see style change and how quickly it did, and was able to roll out something that I think at the end I'm really happy with. That if we would have rolled out something right away, it might have not exactly been what we would want now.
It would have been another iteration of that for sure. Maybe a different color palette. Shout out to Shrimp and Grits. Little insider. There may or may not have been a trademark attempt at potential name if we had gone forward much earlier, which I think it does lead into when we actually did start this. So Felipe, he was living in Richmond. I was in Charlotte. I'm working in banking finance. He's in tech and sales, and so I think that was important for us because we really got to learn the skill sets that I think would guide us through the years after. But I can very distinctly remember I was in my apartment uptown. You were just visiting one weekend, and we were like, we really need to do this. And I think it was probably like early 2012 maybe, or late 2011. And that was sort of when we had taken like a 5-year break, and now we were like, okay, we really need to do this. So let's actually move forward. And it was a lot more work, I know, than I realized that it would be. But we were able to flesh out the brand that we wanted to be. Very scrappy, I remember, what was it? I sent you on a mission. We needed to create our first shirt. And you went to like, what was the store in Gastonia? Mary Jo's.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
We were
Mary
just
Jo's
finding
in
a
Gastonia.
local
Yeah.
resource that carry fabric, and that was a store a lot of people in the region actually would go to because they had a variety of different types of fabric.
Yeah, we were
not
gonna
just for shirting, but just fabric in general.
make our first shirt out of, some random fabric. And then we were like, there's nothing good. I mean, the fabric was fine, but it's not for a men's clothing company. So that kind of sparked, we've got to do a lot more work here to find fabric. We can't just go to our local fabric store. I mean, that's sort of, from the early days, as simple as it was, we can just go to this fabric store and get fabric. And it was not like that at all.
And I think at that time, if I can remember correctly, I was thinking about transitioning from consumer product sales to apparel. So I actually attended a trade show that happens in Charlotte to kind of see, if there potentially could be job opportunities. It was like a show where you had to be a retailer or a buyer in order to attend. And I just kind of like walked in. I didn't have any credentials or anything, and started talking to different brands. And then I realized in this industry, in that wholesale space, a lot of these sales reps are independent contractors, and you would have to buy your own samples. You also, there wouldn't be company insurance, as an independent contractor wouldn't.
Like all commission only.
Yeah, and I was coming from a pretty large, old school Fortune 500 at the time. So I knew that would have been really scary for me because I was fresh out of school at that point still, and I didn't have a lot of savings, and I didn't know if it would work. So ultimately, I just didn't think that would be a good fit for me. And I remember talking to Brad. I was like, why don't we just do it ourselves? Like, why am I gonna work for somebody? And sell their shirts and drive my own car around the country. So that's how
that
kind
was
of
late 2011, early 2012. And that show, it had to have been, it was one of the Patriot Super Bowls with the Giants. That time frame I just distinctly remember because that's when the show was in Charlotte. And yeah, that was like right at that time where we're like, hey, well, we really need to do this. And so once we really started to go, I think you were really good at finding the resources. So
we actually had a factory right out of the gate, but then we quickly realized that the volume that we were doing wouldn't work. I had a friend in Richmond after that was part of an organization I was volunteering with, and he had family in India, but no, Pakistan or India, I can't remember. And we reached out to them, and it just never worked out because of the volume that they were doing was so large.
Right, and that's how it was. That's how it was sort of across the board. But I, for most, if you probably don't know this, maybe you do. There's no factories are us, and the factories that exist, they usually don't have a website. If they do, it's terrible. There's nowhere you just have to kind of know a person who knows a person. And so
the ones that are listed in some type of directory or website are the really large ones, and they're probably doing private label for Nordstrom's or something,
Yeah, the
right?
big-
so
big-
if you're searching,
minimums.
some will come up, but they're just really not our
Yeah.
type of factory partnerships that we were looking for.
I get this question a lot. People are like, well, how did you find out where you make it? And my answer is really, well, I think Felipe talked to somebody who recommended somebody, who he then called somebody, who he then went somebody. We ended up going to Garland, North Carolina, shirt manufacturer there. They make for a lot of really high-end brands, also RIP to the Garland factory. It is no longer there, but for Brooks Brothers, for Tom Brown, for Dolce & Gabbana, for Jack Spade, for
Club
Billy
Monaco,
Reed, Club
yeah.
Monaco. And we went, also we're stepping forward a little bit. We had already figured out our brand at this point. But they really liked Felipe, and they liked our mason jar logo. I mean, we're in like very small town USA, Garland, North Carolina, and so the people that work there are not. They're good people, and so they resonated with our logo and said, "Oh, sure, we'll work with you. You only need 100 shirts. We normally make, a minimum of thousands, but we'll work with you." So that was kind of cool. And when people ask me, I sort of tell them a little bit about that, but I don't think I've ever really dove into that. It's not just I look here and I found the factory. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of
And then those people
chasing
then
down.
at Garland recommended other category for us.
Yeah.
So we were able to then reach out to other factories that they have relationships with. For a while we tried to figure out how we could do socks or
We made some
hosiery.
socks in Hickory, North Carolina.
But that was just somewhere where I just saw an old building that had something on the side, and I just knocked on their door and went in.
a lot of door knocking. That I think is the most important thing. You've got to go there.
Yeah, because you're just
yeah.
cold calling. Half the time they don't answer the phone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
At this time, are you guys still working full time?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. That also, we would continue to work full time for quite a while. I do get that question, and I think my answer with that, there's never going to be I'll quit my job when I replace that income, because that will never happen.
It's depends on what's important to you, or I think if you were to go and look for outside funding, I think that would be more feasible, right? But you're then having to compromise your brand to you have somebody to report to at that point. So it just depends on what you want, and I think that model works for some people.
does.
I think
Yeah.
that our business is just so custom and so specific, and the experience is so specific that it's a little bit harder if you're producing a really simple product. And I think that getting investors, there's nothing wrong with that.
Within those respective jobs that you guys had at the time, were you noticing anything in particular in the space as far as, say, a need for the clothing perhaps that you had really envisioned, for OMJ?
Very, very much. I mean, I think we're in 2012, 2013, and the fits were not good at this point. Some were fine.
The
but-
big box chain custom suiting or semi-custom didn't exist then. So you're either going to a department store, which, if you're going to the more approachable ones, then the fit is usually pretty bad and the quality is not great. And then you go to the higher end department stores, it's very unapproachable, right? For, folks that are fresh out of school, and even frankly, some people that are been in the workforce for a while, they probably need a few more suits, and they can't just, spend their whole entire budget on one at one of the luxury big box. So
It was a need. I mean, Jose Bank was big at the time. It was a buy one, get 5 free.
yeah, it was that in Men's Warehouse, and that's
Brooks Brothers had a larger presence at the time as well.
Yeah.
Especially down south, I think Brooks Brothers had a huge
Yeah.
presence.
yeah. But the price points were still pretty high for the time.
And what I noticed was, it just wasn't a focus, I think, especially at the bank. Some guys knew how to dress, but I think for a lot of folks, it was just a comfort of sort of business casual, that sort of thing. And there was definitely a glaring need for a better dress option, especially for young professionals at the time. And then to back up just a little bit with the name, because a lot of folks will ask OMJ. OMJ is Old Mason Jar. And so in 2012, when we were deciding on a name, both Felipe and I are from North Carolina, so we were like, it can't be coastal. We're not from the coast at all. It's got to be something that ties to sort of our ethos, what we believe in. And at the time, and even still now, is very simple, versatile, timeless. That's sort of always been our hope and dream for the brand stylistically. So we were trying to think of what resonates with North Carolina, not just like North Carolina, but more like Piedmont. Felipe's from Western North Carolina. And so what resonates with that North Carolina brand, and what resonates with timeless and versatile. And I was at my grandmother's, and I remember telling Felipe, I got it. She's canning stuff in mason jars, and it's versatile, it's timeless. Like, that thing's been around for hundreds of years probably, and it's so simple. And so that was really the aha moment, was, the mason jar, it kind of fits perfectly.
Yeah, and it was still like, kind of like that very Southern style. Was kind of like towards the tail end of that. So, it really tied in with the demand, right, in the marketplace of like what people would resonate with in the Southeast. And
A little catchy.
yeah, and at the time, we still had we had big aspirations of like trying to produce more things in the Carolinas. And things changed a lot with the pandemic, unfortunately. But so yeah, it worked out really well for the time.
And things were very all of our stuff was casual at that point. So dress shirts or button downs, polos, ties. We weren't into custom yet. We were getting there. So I think that first year, the launch, 2013, that was a big year for us. We, right out of the gate, we entered the Belk Southern Design Competition. That was an annual competition that Belk did. We were finalists for that.
Yeah. And one of our friends from college, Megan, she actually had won.
That's right.
The year before. So, it was like we felt like it was very approachable, and it was something that we could achieve, right? Like somebody that we went to school with was able to do something like that, and we respect that a lot. And we were like, we should do this.
We did not win, and we may have been a bit bitter about that, but we should not have won. We were 3 months in. But I do remember it was an outpouring of support for us. We were online only. The world headquarters was my spare bedroom. Felipe was living in Richmond at the time.
The day of, though, to speak to that, we had these custom racks that we thought would be good. It would be a good idea to pull into the Belk's headquarters, and it was very, very heavy. And I hate
and hot
any type of trade show setups. Like, that's just like not my thing. I told Brad, like, I don't want to do it. We did a few more after that.
A lot more. Yeah.
But it was very hot that day, I remember. And Brad was so sweaty when we got in there that like it looked like that he had like been in the rain or something. And we're in the bathroom, and he's trying to like dry off with the hand dryers.
The rack kept falling over.
And he would like,
it was like this 80-pound rack.
It was a disaster.
It was like Felipe's apartment in college all over again.
Yes.
Yeah. And our friend Brett built that rack, I remember, right?
Yeah.
Also like furniture style, the reclaimed wood, modern farmhouse was really popular. So the aesthetic of the rack, kind of
Rack modern farmhouse.
it was pipes, and it was a big
wow.
like piece of wood that was like a live edge type. Yeah.
It looks great though. It looks great.
Once it got inside.
A little steampunk.
Yeah, it looks great. Yeah. But yeah, the first year, but I do remember again, despite we had a lot of early press, we had a lot of good things happening, but with any launch, I mean, there's ebbs and flows, and by like September, like there was a month where we sold like one T-shirt, which I've told that story many times. It was definitely like a wake-up call. I call it the reverse Field of Dreams, I think, is my like adequate representation of clothing is not, if you build it, they will come. I think that applies to most things other than Kevin Costner in baseball. But I think just always had thought, okay, if we build this great thing, people are going to love it and buy it, and all of our friends will support it, and it's going to be great. And that was the moment where I realized, all right, this is hard. People have their own lives. They could care less what we're doing, even though it's the most important thing to me. They don't care, and why should they?
And there's some people like that, they just don't care about clothes like we do,
Sure.
right? And I have to remind Brad, I was like, this person just like, they do not care.
Yeah.
Like
that
if you
was
think,
It took years of, I think, therapy. But I think it was a critical moment though, because I tell that story because I think in today's fast-paced world of fast satisfaction, it was not this way for us, but you could go online today and have a website up in 15 minutes. It's going to look beautiful. You could drop ship, connect in, drop ship stuff, ready to go, like live. You could have a brand. Give me an hour and I could create one, and it would look great. But you have a month where you sell one T-shirt, it's over, you're done. I think, so the positive of that is we had spent so much time and energy, and not necessarily capital, but time capital, that we couldn't give up, because we had put so much time into it. So it's almost like this perfect melding of the world that we lived in and the times that we were in, where technology hadn't gotten so sophisticated as it is today, to where there was a lot of manual stuff you had to do that kept us in it because of all the time that we put in it. We couldn't just give up because we had terrible sales. We had to say, oh, well, we gotta we gotta do something different. Mm-hmm. We got to really figure this out. And so I tell that story, hopefully, as like an inspiration.
And in the early days, like there were people that that did support us, that they made, I think that it meant even more when there were folks that didn't care about clothes or maybe had a smaller budget, but they would still buy, right? So there were a lot of those early supporters. We did a Kickstarter, and there were a lot of people that supported us there with friends and family. And like I mentioned before, there were people that, they just don't care about style or clothes. So it was hard to like have that same person and expect that from them, right? I think that like personally, and I'll look at the camera and tell you this, like the people that I do know dress up and the people that I know care about clothes that won't even come in and buy a hat or something like that, those are the people that I'm talking to. I'm looking at you.
Oh,
but yeah, I think that in the early days we did have a lot of really great supporters from friends and family. So,
but I think that has to be hard too. Is like you've put all this effort. You guys have been doing this since college, and then you're like trying to push this out there, and you sell one shirt, and you're like, so wait. So I think it's really good for people to hear. We put so much sweat equity into something that we're continuing to do it. And I think that's really important to say as founders of a business. Sometimes people are like, everyone doesn't love us, we're stopping.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you are aware of this or not at the time, you were ultimately building a community, which I think is, ultimately what we're all trying to do here.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think that we look back and we see those things for sure. But that was kind of a segue into we got to do things a little bit differently. The tried and true, you have an online brand, that's not exactly working. And so stepping into, I still worked at a bank. I'm making clothes. I remember very distinctly being like, well, I have to wear suits, or I want to wear suits, but we don't make suits. So I need to kind of like figure that out. And even Matt, Tom James still is a big thing. And shout out to Tom James, no ill will there. But I met with a Tom James person. I got a couple things, and I was like, you know what, I feel like a bit of a fraud here. If I'm a clothing designer, I should be able to do this. And then when I got it, and it was fine, but I was like, I know materials very well, and I know what I paid, so there's an opportunity here too for a nicer garment, like the pricing here. We're obviously building in a lot of middle layers here to get to the price that we're at versus the fabric we're at. And again, everything was fine, but that's how we got into custom. And so I think...
and I wanted a different approach to custom too. I think that there's a need for that, right? There are some people that want, a salesperson coming to your office or your lobby and being there, sitting there waiting for you to give them their order. But I think that we wanted to provide kind of like the lifestyle part of that lifestyle brand that we talked about, and bring people into our space for them to kind of have an experience that's a little bit different.
Less formulaic, a little more, value proposition, that sort of thing. And so we literally just started figuring out custom. Same process we went through for factories with our shirting, we did that with custom. So I know Felipe, family is originally from Hong Kong. There were recommendations. And so there's a lot of places that make custom clothing, but not a lot of places that make great custom clothing. So that was really the thing. We had to find where the great custom clothing was made.
And the making part is just half of the battle. It's like, do they have systems and tools in place for you to be able to place the order, and be organized and be able to get it within the timeline? There were places, that we worked with in North America that were great when you get the garment, but the process wasn't there, right? It wasn't set up, and that's half the battle.
Right. And so Will was actually one of our first custom clients.
Totally. I distinctly recall meeting Felipe actually for the first time in 2014 at a friend's wedding, and there were rumblings of the custom OMJ experience, which I was very excited about at the time, and still am all these years later.
Yeah.
I'm actually wearing my first OMJ suit today.
Number one.
So on this lovely occasion of ours, first podcast.
So we were doing custom. A big thing about custom is you've got to measure people in person. So I did do that some out of my house, but my wife was not going to be having tons of people coming over all the time, nor did I want to have to pick it up every time. So we would measure people anywhere, on the side of the road, literally, on the side of Graham Street, uptown.
There's a story somewhere about that.
We won't go into that one. In a restaurant. But I did a lot of them out of the Charlotte City Club. And I think that's where we had our first appointment.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Innumerable Stellas
Yes.
over a course of several months.
Yes, it was great. How many shirts did you get?
15 to start.
Okay. And Will does not know this, but I was like, 15? Oh my goodness. What if they don't fit?
They were absolutely perfect. In fact, as a testament, I have on one today. Believe it or not, 2015.
Yeah. So, but that's when I think we realized that there was something, we were onto something, and it was a vast turn from the original old mason jar. Still played into it, but all the people I worked with, where'd you get that suit? I made it. Oh my gosh, make me one. And so it just sort of snowballed where we're getting a lot more people interested in that.
And at the time, like for the space that we didn't have, for the capital that we didn't have, the business model of custom really worked for us, to be transparent. Because when you have retail ready to wear, you have to hold on to a ton of inventory that you don't know if it's going to sell or not. So making that money back takes a really long time. And so that business model of custom is a great model for us too, because of that reason.
Special order, no inventory. I'm notoriously miserly with inventory anyways. I don't like holding on to a ton of inventory. It's a cash flow problem. Custom sort of solved all that for us. So I feel like with our knowledge and expertise, our technical aptitude, so that's another piece that we'll touch on in future podcasts, 100%, because I think that's what makes us, one of the things that makes us special with custom clothing is our technical knowledge. A lot of custom clothing guys are very, pomp and circumstance. It's the flash, it's the bright, and they look great, but I don't know that they invest the time for the technical excellence that it takes to make a custom garment.
Yeah, and some of these stores now that are doing it, I think, maybe it's because they're trying to scale really, really fast. So they've cut out a lot of the process that we use in measuring somebody's body. That there's even, I work in tech, and I know that, there's even technology where they say you can use your phone and scan your body, but it's just not going to be that detailed with every single measurement that you really need for a really great fitting suit.
Yeah, there's a hidden formula in there as a math guy and a finance guy, and it's this variable that a phone cannot tell you and that a body scanner cannot tell you, and that's fit preference. And so
if you have a very average body, I'm sure
Sure.
that some of them come out okay, right?
Sure.
But if you're very specific with what you're looking for,
you can have a dad and a son the exact same size, and they would be in very different fitting garments. And that variable of fit preference is a real thing. And no robot, I don't know, AI is coming for us. But, that can't just be replicated. So you need that. It's part art, part science. So anyways, with that, leading to that, we were deciding, hey, we need a store. City Club's great, but probably need our own spot. I remember, and this is just sort of how, big believers in our, our faith, and things happen. I'm a very positive, glass half full guy. So things just sort of fall in place if you're looking for them and you're open. We were eating lunch uptown one day. Again, I'm still working uptown, so it's got to be uptown because I got to be able to run over there. But we're eating lunch one day at a lot of arcade, Brevard Court. Walking outside, oh, this is really cool. We look up, oh, that place is for rent. That'd be really cool. Probably too expensive. Let's go check it out. It wasn't. And the rest is history. So our first location.
And it was like a salon or something in there before, and they cleaned out all of the fixtures and things, and the walls were just gray, and it had exposed brick. It had the old historic wood floor, so it was pretty ready to go.
It was
we
ready
didn't
to
have to
go.
do too much work.
Very vintagey vibe. I feel like built in 1914 was the building. Second floor is above Valhalla for any local Charlotte folks, right near French Quarter Restaurant. 500 square feet, but it was perfect. And that was our first showroom. And really from there, that's really where I think things took off, that first retail space. And that's really where we were able to actually show in real life, not just online, our vision for our brand. And I think we were able to tap into that experiential retail. And so I think that for us was so key to us getting to the next level. And it was 2016 is when I officially retired and started doing it full time. Felipe dabbled for about 3 weeks and decided.
It was like a month or so, maybe.
Decided
and I was
better coming in being the advisor than the day to day. But yeah, that first location was awesome. So from 2016 to 2020, at our first Uptown location, we won quite a few awards. We won the Our State Magazine 2017 Made in North Carolina Awards for Style. And then 2018, we won the Garden and Gun Made in the South Awards for the style category. So I know those are huge. And again, we'll touch on those at other points throughout the series, I am 100% sure. But that really all led us to where we're at this store today. So in 2020, we moved to South End, and thankfully much bigger than 500 square feet of retail space. We do not have the exposed brick any longer, but at least our walls are not pallets. So that part I am happy with. I do still miss the old space. But throughout the series, we'll get into sort of present day OMJ, what that is. Any questions from you guys on the, I know we've talked a lot of years, but any questions before we wrap up?
This has been incredibly insightful.
Because I've learned things that I didn't know about before.
Me too.
It's going to be all have.
Yeah, me too. Well, great. So in closing, I was told we do need to, for the few people that do end up watching this, submit questions. You can submit questions to info@omjclothing.com. And we will sort of throughout the series, as we get them, we'll answer questions and things like that. And it can be about anything.
Or you can DM us on Instagram too. I
DM us
feel
on
like
Instagram. Yes.
aren't sending emails.
However you'd like to get it. I'll give you Felipe's personal phone number as well. But we'll answer those. It could be about anything, not just OMJ. It could be, what do I wear to a funeral? Or whatever it is, or what do you think about X brand in Italy? You know, it could be really about anything. Again, a lot of experience up here, all walks of the industry and experience, and so we know a lot about a lot, and we can help answer any of those questions. Also, again, we'll be doing this sort of on a bi-weekly basis. And we'll be covering different things, different topics along the way. It won't always just be about OMJ, I promise. And then we just appreciate you guys following along, sticking with us through the creation of this. So I'm really looking forward to it. And again, Felipe, thank you for joining us today. And Felipe will probably not be here for all of the sessions going forward, but we will have guests along the way as well. And yeah, we just really look forward to it. So thank you all for watching. So has anybody watched the Taylor Swift Eras tour
Oh,
yet?
here we go.
I have.
Okay.
I still not watched
I
it.
actually saw it in theaters.
I saw it.
They were like, people were like, we saw it in theater.
Well, as you know, it was great, right?
It's fantastic.
Did you see it?
Yeah, it was crazy in there. People were like dancing like they
Did
were
you
at
go?
the real concert.
Yeah, he saw it in theaters.
Did you go to?
Did you go to the concert too?
No. No.
Guys, Felipe could have very well gone to this concert.
I was in Vegas when she was at in Vegas, and I was at the Mandalay Bay, so I could have walked over, but it was like $5 something for a ticket, and at the time I was like, oh, that's like a lot. But now knowing that people are getting a second mortgage to go to Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift.